are but days away from the 2021 Rumble, and we all know the greatest thing about that event is the surprises. When you're sat there on your couch or on your sofa and you're eating Cheetos, and then you hear some familiar entrance music that you weren't expecting, and you throw your food everywhere, and you just feel all warm and fuzzy in your old tum-tum. Or stomach. So with that in mind, my name is Simon Miller, welcome to What Culture Wrestling, and we are about to rank every single surprise from the very first Royal Rumble to the one in 2020, so strap yourself in, and let's go. Number 36, Hacksaw Jim Duggan in 1988. The first ever Royal Rumble was more of a TV tester to see if Vince McMahon could do it on a grander stage, because he wasn't 100% behind the idea. It was Pat Patterson and Dick Ebersol who were going, please Vince, for the love of everything, give it a go, which is why we only had 20 men in that one, and why probably we had a huge surprise when Hacksaw Jim Duggan, won the damn thing. I mean, you had Jake Roberts in there, you had the Ultimate Warrior, you had the one-man gang who on the house show circuit in the late 80s was feuding with none other than Hulk Hogan, but no, we went for the dude that held a bit of wood and swung it around, and actually was a quite nice little finish. Number 35, Axe and Smash from 1989. When we did level up to 30 men the following year, WWE or WWF then embraced the whole every man for himself tagline, because in at number 1 and 2 were Axe and Smash from Demolition, and nobody could flub and believe it. I mean, this felt like a huge deal, especially because they didn't hold back. They just started punching each other in the face, and who the hell knows what would have happened if Andre the Giant hadn't have walked down and got in the way. Always remember too that Smash was in this, and Smash would soon go on to become Repo Man, the greatest character in wrestling history, and people think I'm joking, I'll make it very clear, I am not. Number 34, Hogan and Warrior in 1990. This was just great. I mean, in 1990, the idea of the Royal Rumble was still making fans' brains go crazy because they couldn't believe it, and that was doubly true when they saw the Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan go nose to nose in the same ring. I mean, what was going on? They only brawled for a few minutes before Rick Rude broke this up, but it didn't matter. We had set the stage, we had planted the seed, and of course it was doing a wink, wink, nudge, nudge to everything that was going to happen at WrestleMania. I mean, just go and listen to the audience here. It's as if they all got Christmas presents in January. Number 33, Randy Savage no-shows in 1991. The Macho Man had left his mark at the Royal Rumble 1991, but it came before the 30-man over-the-top match, because he got involved in the Ultimate Warrior versus Sergeant Slaughter fight, and he cost the Warrior the WWF title, and then realizing he was a marked man, he got out of Dodge. He was so worried about this though, he left the arena entirely, meaning when it was his time to be in the Royal Rumble, he just wasn't there. And actually, now I think about it, we should do more stuff like this now. Quite inventive. Number 32, Sid turns on Hogan in 92. As shocking as it was to see Ric Flair come in at number 3 in the 1992 Royal Rumble and go all the way to the finish where he won the WWF title, the even bigger surprise may have been what happened a few minutes earlier with Hulk's Hogan. Because everybody thought that this was Hogan's Rumble to lose, so when Sid Justice, his apparent friend, threw him over the top rope, it was like your own mother had just turned her back. I mean, the Hulkster got his revenge when he grabbed Sid's arm and tossed him over too. But still, nobody could quite believe it. And of course, it was yet another look at what was going to happen at WrestleMania. Number 31, Bob Backlund's big night in 93. The 1993 Rumble is a little bit dull because it actually lacks surprises, but that's when Bob Backlund decided to take the reins and give it a little bit of a oomph. Breaking the Iron Man record that had been set by Ric Flair the previous year, Backlund went for an incredible 61 minutes, until he sadly ran into Yokozuna, who chucked him over the top rope. The crowd had bought into this as well because they audibly gasped when Bob was eliminated, even though really when you take a step back and think about it, Yoko probably could have done this with just his little finger. Number 30, 2 winners in 94. And this one was planned, because in what has to be one of the best executed finishes in the history of wrestling, both Lex Luger and Bret Hart went tumbling over the top rope and somehow simultaneously landed on the floor at the same time, meaning they pulled it off. Hart would go on to say that producers didn't actually shoot the landing at first because they weren't 100% sure if they were going to do it, but later on when you saw the footage, yeah, it was nigh on perfect. This was all done because Vince McMahon wasn't sure what direction he wanted to take the company come WrestleMania, and as we knew, Bret the Hitman Hart would win out, and thank goodness for that. Not because I don't like Lex Luger, because I just love the Hitman. Number 29, Shawn Michaels goes all the way in 1995. The first man to enter in at number 1 and go all the way to the finish. The other surprise here was that the British Bulldog came in at number 2, and yet the last 2 people in the ring were Shawn Michaels and the British Bulldog. This was also a time when WWE was being very serious about their one big rule that both feet have to touch the floor, because as you already know, the Bulldog chucked HBK over the top rope and he dangled holding it, but because only one of his tootsie toes touched the mat, he was able to skin the cat back in and chuck out the British one, and honestly, it made quite the impact. It's so good that you could probably argue that it's never been topped, but once again, it established this whole thing, meaning if you chopped off one of your legs, you'd probably never lose. Number 28, Vader arrives and kills everyone in 96. Most would like to acknowledge that in 1996, Stone Cold had his very first appearance in the Royal Rumble, but I'm sorry, that ain't nothing when compared to the Mastodon. Because not only did he enter this like a house on fire and start throwing fisticuffs with Yokozuna, who was meant to be one of his best friends, but he then absolutely destroyed Shawn Michaels when he had tipped both these monsters out. I mean, if you want to get a taste of what Vader had been like in every other promotion other than WWE, you need to watch this Royal Rumble. Mostly because a short period after this, he was being scripted to say things like, "I'm nothing but a big pile of fat shit," or something. It sucked. Number 28, Austin cheats in 97. This was so good, I actually remember how I felt when I witnessed it and I was barely a fetus. But even though Stone Cold Steve Austin did get eliminated at the 97 Royal Rumble, the stupid ref didn't see it, so he snuck back in there, eliminated everyone else, and won the thing, even though he'd already lost. It also led to the Final Four pay-per-view, which was really fun, but more importantly, it would build to WrestleMania 13 when Stone Cold Steve Austin would take in Bret Hart in one of the greatest wrestling matches ever. Number 26, the three faces of Foley in 98. Forget about the logistics of this or what official green lit it, but seeing Mankind or Mick Foley or Cactus Jack enter the Royal Rumble 3 times in 1998, well, it was just a good time. Technically, it also made him a super loser because he had 3 different attempts and he still couldn't win the thing, but Mick Foley just had this presence, this aura to him, where you just wanted to see him do well, so it didn't hurt him at all. I don't think anybody else has done this since. Number 25, Mr. McMahon wins in 1999. It was always going to happen somehow, you just knew it, and the story in 1999 is that Vince McMahon was so desperate to stop Stone Cold Steve Austin winning the Rumble, he would do whatever it takes and made sure he had no chance in hell. Not only did he put a bounty on the rattlesnake head, but yeah, when all was said and done, it was the boss having his arm raised, and although he would give it up, it did mean for a short period, he was headed to WrestleMania. Number 24, that dance break in 2000. It is amazing how over Rikishi, Brian Christopher, and Scotty 2 Hotty were in 2000. Like, we're here in Madison Square Garden, and as soon as the lights go off mid-Royal Rumble and they start to dance, everybody just screams. The surprise is that not only, yes, did they do it in the middle of the match, but as soon as it was done, Rikishi grabbed his former partners and he chucked them over the top rope because, again, it's every man for himself, and don't you forget it. Number 23, The Big Show returns in 2001. After being sent to OVW to lose some weight, The Big Show returned at the 2001 Royal Rumble and surprised everyone, including the crowd that reacted accordingly. He ran through almost everyone before The Rock caught him unawares, but that just proceeded to allow him to get back in the ring and decimate the Great One. And yeah, this is one of those times when you did have a surprise entry and you got the noise required, so it really did work. Number 22, Maven eliminates The Undertaker in 2002. It's still nuts, right? I mean, The Undertaker had gone full-on bad guy, but Maven, the winner of the first ever season of Tough Enough, knocking him out the Royal Rumble? You just didn't see it coming. But a right drop kick did send the dead man tumbling over the top rope, meaning the spotlight was on Maven for around about 8 seconds, because then The Undertaker got back in the thing and he just destroyed this guy with a chair. I mean, some of those shots are absolutely sickening, and maybe that's the surprise. Number 21, Jericho gets one over Shawn Michaels in 2003. Needing to get something over Shawn Michaels, given that the Heartbreak Kid had kind of toyed with him up to this point, we found a way to do that at the 2003 Royal Rumble when Jericho and Michaels entered at 1 and 2. Instead of just being long and drawn out though, Y2J absolutely whipped his ass, left him a bloody mess, and then just chucked him out. It was all about setting the scene for their WrestleMania 19 epic, and goes to show that you can actually build stories or integrate them within the Royal Rumble match itself, and 9 times out of 10, it will work. Number 20, the return of Foley in 2004. This Royal Rumble was pretty much brilliant to start to finish, and it had this awesome bit in the middle where the crowd just cheered and cheered and cheered as Mick Foley returned to the company. The last time we saw him, he was having his ass kicked by Randy Orton, so the fact that he returned here to get his revenge, well, it was just great. And of course, once again, it would build to that match they were going to have at WrestleMania, which moved Orton onto a brand new level. And do not forget the amount of times that Mick Foley did that for someone. Number 19, the falling of Vince in 2005. I mean, where do we even start? For starters, when Batista and John Cena did hit the floor at the same time, that was not meant to happen. Batista was meant to win the Rumble. And because Eric Bischoff and Teddy Long, the Raw and SmackDown GMs, had gone home, Vince McMahon, so annoyed, ran out to the ring to try and sort this. And when he got in, he pulled both his quads, so proceeded to shout at these two mammoth men while sitting on his bum. At the time, nobody knew what was going on, so it was both surreal and a surprise, and yet fair play to WWE, it did look like it was part of the show, and it did look like it was part of the plan. The reality of the situation was 10 times more fascinating, and you could watch this over and over and over again, and it will just never compute. Number 18, record breaker Ray in 2006. Rey Mysterio lasted 62 minutes and 12 seconds in 2006, which is a hell of a long time to be in any kind of Royal Rumble. And while it was a little bit of a shame that this was all tied into Eddie Guerrero's death, it was still a pretty satisfying moment. The sheer effort that Ray put in was top notch, and he would go on to win the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania. The only down point is that WWE never pushed him as a real champion. This was like 100 years ago, so let's not worry about it. Number 17, The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels just have a match in 2007. An already good Rumble was made great when we got down to the final two of The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, and they took convention and just burned it to the ground and decided to have a mini one-on-one epic match to close the damn thing. I mean, seriously, it goes for around about 10 minutes and almost makes you forget that you are watching the Royal Rumble, and by the time The Undertaker had thrown him out, well, you were sat down there like Dave Meltzer going, well, I'm going to give it 5 stars. It's been so long that WWE really should consider doing this again with the right people. It worked so well. Number 16, John Cena returns in 2008. This is what the Rumble is all about. I mean, no one saw it coming, because you know no one can see John Cena. And my favorite part is even though the New York crowd absolutely erupt when they hear John Cena's music, within around about 15 seconds they remember, wait a minute, we don't like you, and they rain down the boos. He also came out at number 30, which just makes this ideal. And of course, never forget, he had been ruled out for months because of a torn pectoral muscle, but somehow John is some kind of superhero and was back in around about 12 days. Number 15, Santino breaks a record in 2009. And maybe not a record he would have wanted, because he officially became the man with the shortest amount of time in the Royal Rumble, because he got in there, and I think we timed it to 1 second, and then Kane knocked him out. Santino Marella made the most of this when he went, I wasn't ready. It's really good. Also, it's much better to be thrown out this way than just being eliminated at number 7. I mean, who even was that at this Royal Rumble? Nobody knows. Number 14, Batista eliminates Shawn in 2010. Man, this was such good storytelling. Shawn Michaels had done such a good job of convincing the world that he was prepped and primed to win this Rumble, that when Batista knocked him off the apron and he tumbled to the mat, some fans actually thought it was a mistake. It was also the only way he was going to be able to get another match with The Undertaker, because the dead man had been refusing to fight him, so all of a sudden it was like, my gosh, what's he going to do now? The answer was cost The Undertaker his world title in a few weeks, but in this moment, it's what emotion and wrestling is all about. Number 13, Diesel in 2011. This was more than just Kevin Nash returning to the WWE after years in TNA. This was Diesel coming back to the company, and we hadn't seen that character since 1996. Everything from the ha entrance music to him booting a bunch of people in the head just worked, because the fans were aware of the significance, so they cheered him like he was a king. They knew it had been over 20 years since they had seen this guy, and probably that we were never going to see him again, so they just enjoyed it. Number 12, everybody gets involved in 2012. The 2012 Rumble is not all that good, mostly because of things like this. WWE had decided it would be really funny if every single one of the commentators got involved, and while it was kind of humorous to begin with, they basically just ran it into the ground. Now, yes, there was something funny about Michael Cole showing absolute disgust given that Booker T and Jerry Lawler had both surprisingly entered them into the thing, and then he did the same. But also, again, everything I just said, you don't need to do it that many times. Number 11, the return of Chris Jericho in 2013. A rarity for Chris Jericho in the sense that there was no pomp and circumstance beforehand. Y2J just returned at the 2013 Rumble to a monster reaction, and away he went. He also restarted a feud with Dolph Ziggler, and it saw both these guys last over 45 minutes in this Rumble, and it was just good stuff, and goes to show that you need surprises in the Royal Rumble. Makes everybody happy. Number 10, the wrong guy in 2014. I mean, you know you've screwed up when the beloved Rey Mysterio comes up at number 30 and everybody boos. And Daniel Bryan actually talked about this recently in an interview with the Metro, a paper over here in the UK, where he said he was really pleased that the fans wanted him, but he was not all that happy that they booed Rey. Nobody boos Rey. But yes, everybody had decided that Daniel Bryan surely was going to come out last and win the thing, which did mean that Rey Mysterio got it and Batista, the eventual winner, he got it too. All of this kind of sucked. Number 9, Bubba Ray returns in 2015. I tell ya, it is all about that surprise pop. I know I just said it, but I'll say it again. You could probably have every number from 1 to 30 being a shock, and if it was done well, Oh yeah, it's just good stuff. Philadelphia was so pleased to see Bubba Ray, they roared the roof off the place, and it impressed officials so much that within a few weeks or maybe a few months, both Bubba and Devon were back with the company. Number 8, a phenomenal debut in 2016. Awful camera angles aside, this was a moment to saviour. AJ Styles, the man that was never going to make it to WWE, was always going to be an indie guy, made his debut in the Royal Rumble to a thunderous reaction, and it just reminded you to always bet on yourself. All of this was also built off a career where many had said he is the greatest wrestler in the world, and within 5 minutes he was proving that in a WWE ring, he can do it with anybody. Number 7, 10-10-10 in 2017. This was just nice, and I like nice. I think it's underrated. After knocking on the door for years, the then Ty Dillinger was allowed to take his 10 gimmick and arrive in the Royal Rumble at number 10, and the crowd also thought this was a wonderful thing to do, so everyone just shouted 10 for about 5 minutes. That's what you want at wrestling events, people making noise. It was also a surprise that WWE was actually going to give Ty Dillinger a chance on the main roster, and while it didn't massively work out, at least we gave it a go. Number 6, Shinsuke Nakamura breaks the curse in 2018. If you're into your Rumble stats, you know that you never want to be entrant number 14, because no matter what happens to you in the Royal Rumble, afterwards, your career just explodes. Thankfully, Shinsuke Nakamura doesn't believe in that stuff, and not only did he win the Royal Rumble, but yeah, kind of went on to have a good time. And while it didn't lead to the passing of the torch like many of us had hoped, this was a guy winning that fans actually wanted to see win. And you know the controversy with the Royal Rumble, that doesn't always happen. Number 5, Ronda Rousey arrives in 2018. There was way too much smiling and pointing, but let's not pretend otherwise. Ronda Rousey is a huge mainstream star, and her debuting with the WWE in 2018 was a massive deal. It was a historic night all round because it was also the first ever Women's Royal Rumble that was won by Asuka, and this whole thing ended with Ronda, Asuka and Charlotte Flair all looking at each other, and it was a sight that many had said they would never see. Number 4, Nia Jax in 2019. The following year, we had made it very clear that we were always going to have men and women's Royal Rumbles, but Nia Jax didn't care about that when she entered the men's version and saw the internet meltdown. At the time, it was going to be a catalyst to have a bunch of house show matches between Nia and Dean Ambrose, and that never happened. And unfortunately for Jax, all that really did go down was she got RKO'd, but I actually really liked this. Thought it was pretty well done. Number 3, Becky Lynch in 2019. WWE had finally learned an important lesson in 2019. Given everything that happened with Roman Reigns a few years before that, and everything with Daniel and Bryan that we've talked about, they heard the crowd going, "Can we please have Becky Lynch win?" So they just had Becky Lynch win. It was an odd path to get there, as she had to replace an injured Lana at the last minute, but that's where the surprise came from, and seeing the man start her path to the top, I tell you, it will put a tear on your eye, like Ric Flair. Number 2, Edge in 2020. I mean, what the hell else? Even though there had been rumors leading up to this event, the fact that the rated R superstar, who had to retire in 2011 because of a neck injury, was able to make his surprise return at the Royal Rumble, I could watch this until the day I die. The ovation he receives is absolutely thunderous, and although the global pandemic stole away any more of these because we weren't allowed to have fans in the building, slowly but surely they are going to come back, and I'm sure we're all going to heap verbal praise onto Edge. Number 1, Naomi in 2020. You know what was also really lovely on the same evening? The fact that in the Women's Royal Rumble, Naomi also returned. Now, it wasn't the same as Edge's for obvious reasons, but we hadn't felt the glow for ages, and it was so good to see her back. And she had such a good performance. Many people went, oh, finally, WWE's gonna give her a solid push. I mean, that didn't happen, and we're still waiting, but for the time we did get it, it was kind of nice. And there you go, kapow! Every single biggest surprise from every single Royal Rumble, and make sure you now get in the comments and let us know what your favorite was. Then like the video, share the video, and subscribe. You can read stuff like this over on whatculture.com. You can watch more videos here on What Culture Wrestling. And I know you're into social media. Go and find What Culture and give us a follow. My name is Simon for What Culture. Make sure you enjoy the Royal Rumble. It comes but once a year. I'll see you on the next one.